we have this mentality that unless we're in discomfort, the workout is not going to work for us. And that's especially once you get over the age of 40, we need to really just kind of back that down a little bit and look at it. It's like, okay, 1 or 2 workouts a week should do that, but the other workouts shouldn't. There's no sense in making yourself sore when it's going to take you 48 to 72 hours to recover, because then your next workout, you're just going to be at a much higher risk of pulling a muscle or having a nagging injury or something like that.
Hey there, I'm Amy.connell. Welcome to Graced Health, the podcast for women who want simple and grace-filled ways to take care of themselves and enjoy a little chocolate in the process. I'm a certified personal trainer and nutrition coach who wants you to know your eating, movement, and body don't have to be perfect. You just need to be able to do what you're called to do. Happy New Year! If you are listening to this live or close to when it dropped, this episode is dropping on January 5th. So I hope you had a wonderful, restful, joyful season of Christmas and New Year. I can't wait for you to hear my guest, Pete McCall, today. I first met Pete at a conference several years ago when I took one of his lectures on strength training. He didn't know who I was. I didn't know who he was, and we didn't even meet during that time, but that was my first introduction to Pete and his breadth of knowledge. It's funny, I don't remember much about the lecture. Sorry, Pete, except that he told us that he had his parents do some specific exercises to increase their strength and balance when he had his babies. And I just thought that that was genius. Pete is an educator for fitness professionals. So he is who I look to receive evidence-based information. He is really focused on bringing science-based data to the people that he speaks to, so that way we can bring it to you. I quote his book, Smarter Workouts, in many of my episodes of season 1. So if you like what he has to say, and I know you will, I really encourage you to go back and listen to some of the fitness-based episodes in season 1 if you haven't yet. And that book is a staple of my own education, as well as his podcast, All About Fitness. If you love geeky episodes, the ones that we have here at Graced Health, I know you will love the All About Fitness podcast. Let me tell you just a little bit about Pete. He is a ACE and NASM certified personal trainer, certified strength and conditioning specialist, international presenter, fitness blogger, and author of several articles, textbook chapters, and the book, Smarter Workouts, The Science of Exercise Made Simple. Pete holds a master's degree in exercise science and has been educating fitness professionals for more than 15 years. He has been featured in publications such as the Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, Self, Glamour, Shape Magazine, and is, as you can tell, he is a sought-after media resource for accurate, in-depth insight on how to get results from exercise. One thing I think you'll really appreciate about Pete is his realistic approach to fitness. And I know that I appreciate he has a sweet tooth like me. Okay, so I know we are all fresh and excited about our new year, but if you're like me, that wears off in about 3 days. That's why I invite you to get my free download, How to Enjoy Shame-Free Health by Breaking 8 Rules. It combats several health rules we've grown up with, and I think you'll find it's a nice complement to whatever January looks like for you, whether or not you are just killing it and doing all the things that you had hoped to do, or maybe you hadn't. Wherever you are, this download will meet you there. Go get yours at gracedhealth.com/bad rules. Okay, let's bring on Pete. Pete, I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for coming to the show.
Amy, thank you so much for inviting me. I've really enjoyed our email exchanges, and it was so much fun to have you take my super large class last week, where I think you're the only person there who showed up. But no, honestly, thank you for inviting me on your podcast.
Well, okay, so I wasn't going to say that part, and I do want to get to that. I want to get to that a little bit later, because that was a really fun class. And I have to say, I don't know if you feel the same way, but for as someone who does programming for other people all the time, it was so nice just to walk in and have someone else tell me what to do.
It's funny you say that because one of the things I want to do and I'm trying to get better at is taking other people's classes.
Mhm.
But so unless I know the instructor, it's hard for me. It's hard for me because it's like I don't feel, especially being in my 48-year-old body, I don't want
Yeah.
to feel compelled to have to do every single exercise. Because as you know, our bodies sometimes want our mind might be willing, but our body might not, and that's where we need to just pay attention
Oh,
to it.
yeah. And I don't know about you. So I turn by the time this show airs, I'll be 46. And man, that is a really, really hard transition to make with having the mind meet where the body is, because I know that there's a lot of things I love to do and I want to do, and I'm having a hard time doing.
And that's just it, right? It's like I don't, unless I know the instructor, I don't want to walk into somebody's class
Mhm.
and be that guy who's not doing the exact workout because my knee might be feeling it that day, or my shoulder,
Yeah.
or my back, or whatever, and
Yeah.
or I just look at what they're doing together, and I'm like, and that's where the educator in me gets a little critical sometimes. It's like, why did you link these two exercises together? Or this makes no sense to me. I want workouts, to me, Amy. I want workouts kind of need to have a flow and need to make sense. And I realize that too. Sometimes people might take my classes and they might go, "Why did you do that?" And that's really too where I appreciate having other pros come in and take my class, because I learn from that just as much. But that's my issue. I need to get better about taking other people's classes. So I really enjoy you doing you taking the time to take mine.
It was great. It was great. I felt fantastic. I don't typically, so I'm 2 hours behind ahead of you.
Yeah.
And I don't typically work out at 2. So even that, just changing the rhythm of when we move and when we typically exercise, that was different for me. And yeah, I felt great. It's funny. My husband, he's still working from home. He was like, "Do you have a lot of makeup on or something? Your face is really red." He's not used to seeing me sweaty and red faced at that time either.
Well, it's funny how little changes like that. Like today, I think when we get done with this, I have another thing right after this. But usually, I've been trying to mountain bike 1 or 2 days during the week, and I usually mountain bike later in the day. But with the time change, I'm having to
Yeah.
readjust that schedule, and that's like now it's gonna be like taking the time in the middle of the day go for a bike ride as opposed to later in the day, because I don't want to lose the sunlight. Losing the sunlight, did that the other night, and that's when you just anyway, the
Oh,
little changes like that can really, it's just making that adjustment and making it fit in your schedule.
totally, totally. Yeah, it changes up that efficiency in the body too. Okay, I feel like I have so many questions I want to ask, so I just want to jump right in. I know you have been, you are an educator, and I first have to just thank you for educating me, if no one else. I mean, I learn a lot from you. You have such great content on your All About Fitness podcast. I know it's for fitness enthusiasts, but it really speaks to me. I've learned a lot, and I've been able to integrate that into my own programming. I know you have a real strong focus right now on exercising as it relates to aging. So I'm just curious if this is something that you've always focused on and have you always been aware of, or have you been forced into it because of your own aging process?
Well, that's a great question. I really appreciate that. It is something that actually a number of years ago when I was working for the American Council on Exercise, I worked directly for the organization. And for listeners, that's one of the big personal training certifications. But as an educator, I started seeing this thing, Amy, about I'm Gen X. I'm 48 years old. I'm
Mhm.
right in the middle. I used to BMX race when I was in my teens. I have friends who are in their early 50s now who still have half pipes and they still skateboard and they still do that with their kids. And I ride my mountain bike like I used to BMX race. But what occurred to me a number of years ago was that our population, our generation, Gen X, has grown up with fitness. We have
Yeah.
grown up. We're kids of the 80s. I'm only 2 years ahead of you, but we grew up with the big muscles. We grew up with the Schwarzeneggers, the Stallones, and that's who our generation aspired to be, right? I mean, you had the people that you wanted to live up to. And so what occurred to me a number of years ago when I was still at the American Council on Exercise was that nobody is speaking to our generation of how do we stay fit in our 40s. And now as we transition from our 40s into the next decade, we are the fittest. This is the first time ever we're the first generation ever who's grown up with fitness. And so what I wanted
Mhm.
to do was be able to speak to our generation about how do we use fitness to be able to manage the aging process. So everything I've done, and I left ACE. One of the reasons why I left ACE is because if I had done anything while working for ACE, they would have owned the IP on that, the intellectual property on that. And
Oh,
I left ACE as a direct employee and started working as a contractor. So anything that I produced, I could retain the rights to. And if I
yeah.
write an article for ACE, if I write a blog for ACE, I license that article to them and that content, but I can still take the science and apply it to other things that I do. And that's what I've tried to do. That's kind of like the secret sauce is if I had stayed working for the organization and started going down this route, then they would have owned the IP on anything I would have produced for them internally, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. Well, that makes a lot of sense. And it's interesting because I think starting with our kids' generations, obviously there's a lot of unhealthiness in that, but I hadn't really thought that we're the first ones. I mean, you did the Stallones and the Schwarzeneggers, and I was looking at Denise Austin and Jane Fonda, and
Well, no, but exactly. But this is, I mean, our parents or the generation ahead of us is a little bit. The baby boomers, because the fitness really became popular. Commercial fitness really became popular in the early to mid '70s with the Cooper Clinic promoting aerobics. You had Jane Fonda, Nautilus, and I consult with Nautilus. Nautilus was produced in 1970, so Nautilus made strength training more accessible because Nautilus machines kind of took away the challenge of barbell lifts. And Nautilus, because it does muscle isolation, was perfect for bodybuilders. So when Schwarzenegger made pumping iron, it just was like this perfect mix of all of a sudden everything in the 80s just blew up. And this is the first time. What's so exciting about right now, and this is the work I've been trying to do with the podcast and everything I've been writing, is this is the first time that we've had people in their 60s and 70s who've been exercising their entire lifespan. It's the first time that scientists have had a chance to see and study what does 5 years of exercise do to the human physiology. And what we're learning is just, or what scientists are learning, and I'm trying to share with people is just, it's absolutely astounding and how it affects us.
yeah. Well, let's dig into that a little bit because I think my listeners want to know, they're fit, they're moving, they're smart. And I think they're like me, they really like the geeky stuff. So I mean, for those of us who have been going to the gym since we were 20 and we're now in our mid 40s or 50s, I mean, what does that do for this scientifically within our bodies that we wouldn't have had we not been moving? And even 5 years, like you said.
Well, and think about that. If you look at the enzymes, so you look at there are two different, our metabolic pathways, right? And for listeners who might not be as up to speed on this, there are different ways our body produces energy. Like right now, if you're listening to this, sitting in the car or sitting at home or going for a walk, even you're producing energy aerobically. So you're using oxygen with primarily fat. Now, when you start working harder, as soon as you start sweating, your body's going to transition and start using carbohydrate or glycogen stored in the muscle. So one of the most important benefits about staying fit throughout the aging process is efficient metabolism of carbohydrate within the muscle cells. Your muscles produce, your type 2 muscle fibers produce different enzymes for converting carbohydrate to ATP than the type 1 muscle fibers. So one of the important things is for years, when people got older, 60, 70 years old, they said, oh, no, you don't do high intensity exercise, or people that don't start high intensity exercise. But if you're in your 50s and you've been taking cycling classes for 30 years, or if you're in your 50s or late 40s and you've been doing barbell training, don't stop. Do not stop. Now, if your knee barks at you a little bit, or if your shoulder is a little bit, whatever, pay attention to it and listen to it and find something else to do. But whatever, if you've been fit for 20, 30 years, don't slow down just because the calendar says a certain number or that your age says a certain number. What we're seeing is you might need to adjust your intensity. You might need to take an extra day off between or do a lower intensity exercise. But really, it just what everything the data is showing, you just keep going and don't stop.
Yeah, that's so true. Okay, while you talk about rest, let's talk about that a little bit more because I think there's this mentality that is really hard for a lot of people to get out of, which is go hard or go home. I'm going to gain weight if I don't work out. I mean, you've heard it all, right? And
Yeah.
you're laughing like you know what I'm talking about because I know you've heard it too. So talk to me a little bit about and the listeners about the importance of rest and how rest days change as we get older and what those rest days might look like.
And that's a great point, Amy, because when I say rest, I don't mean rest in jet per se. What I mean is you can't go slamming your face into the wall every day. Like when we were in our 20s, I mean, come on, we were in our 20s and I started working in gyms when I was 26, 27 years old. And it was like every day it was just like go,
Yes.
teaching cycling classes 5 or 6 days a week, teaching strength training classes. But somewhere around the mid 30s, my body's like, hey, well, time out. We can't keep doing that.
Yeah.
So what I mean is it's like if you have a really hard workout, and we all love that hard workout of where we're sweating and we feel slightly fatigued walking out of the gym, the next day, physiologically, once you get over the age of 35 or 40, your muscles need a little bit more time to repair and recover. That carbohydrate that I talked about that your type 2 muscle fibers store, it takes a little bit longer for your type 2 muscle fibers to replenish that carbohydrate store. And that's so important because if you don't give your muscles 48 hours to fully recharge and reload, the next time you work out, you might be metabolizing amino acids or protein, and then you don't have the protein available to repair the tissues. So the idea that I write about in Smarter Workouts and what I'm putting in my new book, Ageless Intensity, is this idea of we want to have like a 3-day cycle where one day we train really hard. The next day we train not so hard. We might do a yoga class. We might do a Pilates class. We might do a dance class. That's where we're still working, but we're working at a different level of intensity and we're doing a different load on the muscles. So I learned this from a guy named Michelle Dalcourt a few years ago about one day you want to do like a really heavy loaded class, like a really heavy high intensity workout. The next day you just want to do a body weight workout where maybe you're moving to multiple planes. And then the third day, that's where you would do your metabolic conditioning workout. And depending on how you feel, how you've recovered, how you've slept, that metabolic conditioning workout could be high intensity, or that metabolic conditioning workout could be moderate intensity. And then you would start the cycle over again. So for bodybuilders, people that are used to bodybuilding, you have the 3-day split of chest and back one day, legs and whatever, abs the next day, and shoulders and arms the third day. We're used to that kind of that split mentality. So I'm trying to get people to think about a split mentality in terms of intensity, of high intensity, low to moderate intensity, and then depending on how you sleep and how you refuel, moderate to high intensity again. And then that really is what it comes down to. Within a week, for people that love to exercise every day, within a week, we should do 2 to 3 really hard workouts in a week. We should do 2 to 3 moderate intensity workouts in a week, and we should do 1 or 2 low intensity workouts in a week. And obviously that's going to adjust based on work schedule, life schedule. And that's just really, once we get over the age of 40, we just really start cluing into how's our nutrition, how's our sleep, how's our hydration, because all that goes into how well you and how hard you can train, how hard you can push yourself. Some weeks, as you well know, some weeks you're probably firing on all cylinders and everything falls into place. And then other weeks where your kid has something, your kid says, oh yeah, by the way, mom, you need to make, X amount we need to do something for school tomorrow, or, your spouse gets sick, or life happens some weeks. And on those weeks, you may not get the high intensity workouts that you want, but just do something for 10 to 20 minutes to stay active.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I love that. And I think that's good to hear too, because I think particularly, and I don't think it's fair to like lump everybody into male and female and what is different, but even just talking with you, your experience and your vision of fitness was different than mine growing up, right? Like I've been writing in the book that I've been writing about, men were trained to take up as much space as possible, right? Big muscles, big all of that. Women were trained to take up as little. So that's a little unfair for me to
No, I like that
bulk.
concept. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's not to get too siloed into genders, but I think a lot of women here, we heard this, okay, HIIT workout, high intensity training, get it. Okay. Well, I'm going to do that every day. And I heard this word once on your show, all about fitness, that I thought was a made up word until I looked it up, and fetishize. I can't remember which guest said it, but I think that we have a tendency to do that. We're like, oh, HIIT training is good for me. Okay, I'm going to do it every time I work out. And what I'm hearing you say is, no, maybe like every third day, which turns into, twice or, 2 to 3 times a week or something like that, in order to get the maximum benefits of that, plus the other things that we're doing.
And that's exactly it. We've had this idea of we need to work hard with every workout. And you can sweat. Every workout should make you sweaty. Every workout should make you breathe a little quicker. And that's where, when I was at the American Council on Exercise a number of years ago, we moved away from using 220 minus age, and we moved towards the talk test. And I think you're familiar with that, and using the talk test. And for listeners, if you can talk comfortably, you're working aerobically. You're using oxygen and fat as fuel. But as soon as your body needs, your muscles need energy quicker, you're going to start using more carbohydrate. Well, a byproduct of carbohydrate metabolism is carbon dioxide. So your lungs have to work quicker to move carbon dioxide out of your body, as well as your lungs are working faster to breathe, to bring oxygen in, and it limits your ability to talk. So when you're working really hard, exercising really hard, you can't talk. But so we should have 2 or 3 workouts a week where we get to the point of where we can only grunt. How you doing?
Yeah.
I mean, we know how that is.
It's the one word responses.
Exactly. And then we should have 2 or 3 workouts a week where you're sweating and you're breathing quick. But if you and I were going for a run or we're on a bike ride together, we could carry on a conversation. Now, there should be 1 or 2 points where we're working hard enough where we wouldn't, but that's the whole idea, is we just want to monitor, and we can monitor that intensity, because I think for everybody, and I see this with guys and with women, and it just is, we have this mentality that unless we're in discomfort, the workout is not going to work for us. And that's, especially once you get over the age of 40, we need to really just kind of back that down a little bit and look at it. It's like, okay, 1 or 2 workouts a week should do that, but the other workouts shouldn't. There's no sense in making yourself sore when it's going to take you 48 to 72 hours to recover, because then your next workout, you're just going to be at a much higher risk of pulling a muscle or having an ag.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing I've grown to respect through learning from you and other educators is the importance of taking the movement down a notch to enable you to move harder when you want to, for example, with all of the mobility stuff, and how important that is. So talk to me a little bit about and the listeners about mobility, when to incorporate those type of movements, what it is, and all of that kind of good
Thank you,
stuff.
because this is such a great topic. I just recently spoke with Doc Jen Esker. I got to pronounce her name right, Esker. And listeners might know her as Doc Jen Fit on Instagram. And she has an amazing following, and she's a doctor of physical therapy. And she really talks about mobility. And there's a difference here, because for years, especially those of us that grew up in the 80s and 90s, right? If you did sports, what'd you do? You ran 2 laps and you sat down, you stretched for 15 minutes. Well, static stretching relaxes the muscles and in essence turns the muscles off. So if you do a static stretch, what you're going to do is you're going to calm the muscle down. You're kind of calming the muscle down and putting the muscle to sleep. That's not what we want to do before exercise. So mobility is a combination of movement, of where you're taking the joint through a range of motion and you're moving the muscle through a complete range of motion. And that in essence is what we want to do. We want to have like kind of a mobility workout 2 or 3 days a week, of where we're moving to multiple planes. We're doing like reverse lunges, side lunges, transverse plane lunges. We're doing something off the ground, like a half Turkish get up or a kneeling to standing, or where we're moving a piece of cable equipment across our body, and we're doing rotational movements, because that's what we want to be. We want to be able to take the joints through a full range of motion. And the Indians, I mean, by this I mean the Indian subcontinent Indians. The Indians had it right with yoga, and they've been practicing yoga for thousands of years. Because when I first started doing yoga, Amy, I was like, oh my goodness, these guys got it right, because the practice of yoga is moving in multiple planes of motion, moving the tissues through multiple planes of motion. And I know with your listenership is really honoring the body and honoring the gift that we've been given by teaching it how to work more efficiently. Because I think a lot of us get caught up in this mindset of I need to go slam and go really hard and I'm sore. But if we don't take the time just to move within our body, then we're not really doing what we can to really honor it and take care of it.
Yeah, yeah. And that, I mean, I have really grown to love the mobility movement, which has a lot of those yoga based movements, and then some, all of the other stuff. And I agree. I mean, it's taking that, it is honoring, and it also honors you where today, so that way you can do other things later, because there's a lot of us who feel like if I'm not breathing hard and sweating like mad and sore the next day, then I haven't gotten a good workout. But what you're saying with mobility movements is no, that is part of the holistic and the well-roundedness of
Yeah,
exercise.
and that's just well, I learned this, and I know we talked a little bit about this last week. One of the mentors, my mentors, I learned this from is Gary Gray, and Gary is a physical therapist based out of Michigan. Have you ever read any of his stuff or seen any of his courses? Okay.
I haven't. No, I
Well, yeah,
can't wait to go
Gary, if you
check them
check
out
out the
though.
Gray Institute, Gary, and here's the thing is Gary is also a very Christian. Gary is very Christian. So when I went through I did his year-long mentorship, and he made his faith a big part of it. And Gary's approach is body, mind, and spirit. Whereas we take care, it all goes together, right? And that was the approach I took, of where I might not be as religious as Gary is, but I took to heart that message of, if we move within this vessel that we've been given, if we take care of it and we move it in multiple planes, and we do the different patterns with it and teach it and we use it correctly, then we can just make it last a lot longer for us to do, to do the other stuff that we want to do. And that really is, Gary really kind of helped me open my mind to that side of it, of the spiritual aspect of exercise, if you will, because we have been given this body and we have to take care of it. I heard something the other day, and is that we are spiritual beings inside. We are in essence, what we are is we are spiritual beings inside a physical body right now in our time here on earth. And that can get a whole metaphysical discussion. But that's my approach that I try to take with it, right? Is that we are, and so what we need to do with the body that we've been given is we need to take care of it. We need to fundamentally take care of it. And just for listeners, I am not a Johnny six pack. I've been a fitness educator for years, and kind of on purpose, I don't worry about my weight so much. I really just focus on being able to move and be able to enjoy all the activities you want to do. Because to me, Amy, I get intimidated when I see these people that are like super fit, super thin, six pack abs, and I'm like, oh my, is that really attainable? Because a lot of that is, some of it is attainable, but a lot of it is genetic. So I don't want people to focus on appearance. I want people to focus on movement and how they feel. That's really what I try to get at with all the stuff I produce.
And you know what, Pete? I have to tell you, I respect that about you so much. I've heard you say that before, and I kind of feel I'm the same way. Like, you'll never see me on Instagram in just a sports bra and, and capris, because I'm just not comfortable with that. But I think that really exhibits a lot of leadership too. And I think that a lot of the fitness professionals need to be reminded of that. And yeah, there are some genetic components. There are some other things. And quite honestly, I like a little bit of chocolate after my meals.
I try to, especially as we get older, I've learned that as we get older, nutrition is really important just for how I feel. I don't necessarily care. My weight's going to fluctuate a few pounds from one week to the next based on like everything else and like everybody else. But I find that just the days when my diet gets a little bit loose and I get away from trying to really be mindful, I just feel it so much differently. I feel it in my joints now. I don't sleep as well. And so for me, I look at it as, again, we've been given this. If you take a look, I'm of German heritage. I grew up in the Lutheran faith, but I'm a German heritage. So I kind of look at my body as like a Porsche. If I'm buying a Porsche, I'm not going to go to the cheap, the cheap, not the Walmart, but the cheap gas station at the corner. I'm going to go seek out the high octane fuel and put it in the Porsche. So that's my basic approach to nutrition right there.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. Okay. I know you are. So first of all, I have to tell you, your book, Smarter Workouts, has been fantastic. I actually did my very first season of the podcast. I focused it all on fitness because that's my wheelhouse, and just did solo episodes. And I think I quoted you like every week. So there's so many good things in there. And one of the things that that I really loved about it were all the workouts in there. So I'm super excited for Ageless Intensity to come out, this new book that you're working on that really focuses on how exercise slows the aging process. And a lot of my listeners are, they're our age. And so, of course, everybody's kind of wondering, like, how can I slow this down? So I was wondering if you could, you could go dig into that a little bit for us and kind of explains how exactly exercise does slow down the
Well, and
aging process.
well, thank you for those kind of words about smarter workouts. The tough thing, and I think you'll find this as you write and you really take the time to do it, and you're like, okay, is this resonating? Do people get the message? And that's where what I haven't done is I haven't gone on too many other podcasts. So you're one of the first ones I'm going to do. But over the course of the next few months, I'm going to really try to get out and try to get a little bit more. Because sometimes it's like you look at it and like, I don't want to self-publicize. It's just that's sort of the ugly side of our business, right? Is of doing the Instagram and I have a hard time doing that because it's like on one hand, it's like, ugh, am I really that interesting? But on the other hand, it's like, well, I'm trying to help people I want people to take a different point of view with fitness. And so what I came up with when I was looking at ageless intensity is I do a lot of work with Stairmaster. Stairmaster is one of my primary clients right now. And I develop education programs based around the Stairmaster brand of high intensity interval training. And so over the last number of years, I started seeing in the research literature that I was reading is that and again, I saw this back to ACE going back almost 10 years now, is that when we do high intensity exercise, our body produces more growth hormone. Our body produces more testosterone. And if you watch anybody who watches a sports show, if you're watching the Texans game, you're watching the Cowboys game, which you might not necessarily want to do this season, but I mean, I'm not going to say anything because I'm relatively agnostic right now in the NFL. I just watch it, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But you see all these commercials for men for testosterone replacement therapy. And for women, one of the big treatments right now for quote unquote anti-aging for women is to go to a clinic and get growth hormone injections. Well, our body produces exercise, high intensity exercise elevates levels of growth hormone. So if you're doing a high intensity interval training workout, whether you're doing weights or whether you're doing an indoor cycling class, part of the repair process, and that's why it's important to take 2, maybe 3 days off between high intensity workouts. Part of the repair process is your body is going to produce more growth hormone. So you're damaging the muscle fibers. And so what your body will do is say, okay, I need to replace or repair those muscle fibers. So let me produce more growth hormone. That's going to stimulate satellite cell production. And that is what, in essence, we create new muscle tissue. So the body is absolutely an amazing recycling plant. If you want to look at recycling, the body does it because when we exercise at really high intensity, we're increasing cell turnover. We're producing new cells. We are enhancing mitochondrial density. And for people that have a bad flashback to high school biology when they hear the word mitochondria, and I'm one of them, but mitochondria are those organelles in your type 1 muscle fibers, muscle cells that convert oxygen to energy. So when we do this, when we do high intensity exercise, we're producing the hormones that build new tissue in our body, and we're enhancing the cellular function that uses oxygen. And there's a really great piece of research. I had the head researcher on the podcast a little bit more than a year and a half ago. Ball State had 3 groups. They had 2 groups in their 70s, 2 groups of 70-year-olds. One group were competitive athletes. They had been doing marathons. They've been doing running races their entire adult life. The second group were people who just been recreationally active, like you and I, going to the gym 3 to 5 days a week. And the third group of 70-year-olds were just, sedentary, didn't do that much activity. The two 70-year-old groups that were fit, their muscle biopsies, what they did, and they also had a group of 20-year-olds. There was another group in there of 20-year-olds because they wanted to compare the muscle tissue of the 70-year-olds to the muscle tissue of the 20-year-olds. And what they found were the 70-year-olds who've been exercising active their entire life, their muscle tissue was remarkably similar to the 20-year-olds. Was the metabolic properties, the ability to convert glycogen to fuel, the mitochondrial density was very similar. So basically exercise kind of like freezes your muscle tissue in time, if you will, that we cannot slow down the aging process. There are a number of different theories about why we age, and you will lose. I mean, the research literature is when they've studied powerlifters and powerlifters compete in bench press, squat, and deadlift. And so these guys men and women lift a tremendous amount of weight. Even powerlifters in their 40s and 50s will lose muscle mass, and they train exclusively for that. So there's nothing we can do to slow down the fact that we are going to age. There's nothing we can do to stop the aging process, but what exercise, and specifically high intensity exercise, does is really slow it down. So the average person who does not exercise might lose up to 10% of their muscle mass in their 40s and 50s. The powerlifters will only lose about 1 to 2% of their muscle mass in their 40s and 50s. They're still losing muscle mass, but at a 10, at an exponentially less, significantly less rate. And it just is. So this is the type of data that researchers are able now to collect, because this is the first time that we've had these populations to really study and say, okay, you're in your 60s and you've been doing deadlift competitions for 30 years. Let's take a look at your muscles and compare that to other 60-year-olds and see the results. And just that's really where they're just being blown away by what they're seeing.
How does that relate to people who, I mean, like I've had clients come to me, they're like, I'm turning 40 in 6 months. I haven't been taking care of myself. I've been doing my job and doing my kids and doing my, like all of this stuff. And I'm ready to take care. I just want to take care of myself. So how does that science relate to those who have not been exercising their whole lives, but have started, maybe let's just say around the age 40? I mean, does it still slow down the process?
That's such a good question, because I get that, this has been my career. I've been doing this since my 20s, and I get the fact. I mean, I have, friends I played rugby with, fraternity brothers who reach out to me. I mean, get the fact you get bogged down with work, you get bogged down with kids, and you get away from a fitness program. So you gain a few pounds, or just, you get deconditioned, right? But you're in Texas, you're in kind of car country. And what was the one that there's that show on Discovery Channel about that guy in Dallas who buy old cars and turn them into new cars? Well, that's the good thing about the human body, Amy, is you can take, just like you can take an old 68 Mustang that's been left in the backyard, and with a little body work, some new paint, and replace the engine, you can make that 68 Mustang look brand new. You can absolutely do the same thing with the body. If you're in your early 40s, your late 30s, and you've put on a few extra pounds, and it's just a matter of being slow, being methodical, and being consistent is the most important thing. That's the one thing I really don't like. And I think we've gotten better at it over the years, but a lot of people in our industry will try to practice and will try to pitch immediate results. And this stuff is not immediate. And you can't think about it in terms of weeks. You have to think about it in terms of years. I mean, I make the joke all the time that one of the reasons I still sprint is I'm 48 years old. I have never entered a sprint running race in my life since summer camp, and I don't plan on doing that until I'm in my 70s. But I am going to do the Senior Olympics. My plan is to do the Senior Olympics when I'm in my 70s, because all I have to do is maintain my speed for the next 22 years, and I'll be one of the fastest white guys out there on the Masters sprint circuit. You know what I mean? That's just.
I love that.
But I try to take the long view, right? It's like that's why I'm not so worried about if I have an extra pound or two right now. Is I look at it as exercise. Every time we exercise, what we're doing is we are giving ourselves a longer lifespan. We are increasing our longevity, and we are reducing. Think about exercise. I mean, healthcare right now, and this is not even dealing with the pandemic, but healthcare is such a it's such a horror show that, which is better, doing 30 minutes of exercise and sweating for 30 minutes, or getting sick and having to go to the doctors and deal with your insurance and deal with this and get on a prescription and do that. I mean, for me, I'd rather stay fit and do 30 minutes of exercise. I joined a new health insurance, and then I'll shut up. But I joined a new health insurance company last year, and I was going through the entry stuff, and I had to talk with a nurse on the phone. I had to go through the first physical, and they're like, you're not taking, I was 47 at the time. And they're like, you're not on any medications? I'm like, no, I'm not taking any medications. Like, no, seriously, are you on medication? I'm like, no, I'm not. I don't take anything. I don't have any I don't do any medications. I take multivitamins, and I got listed as a smoker because I smoke an occasional cigar. I said, when I travel internationally, I like to end my international trips with a nice Cuban cigar. And so I always, that's awesome. One thing I'll do on my last evening on an international trip is I'll look for a good cigar. It's the old Hannibal from A-Team. I kind of like it when a plan comes together. And that's my vice. I don't drink anymore. I stopped drinking alcohol a number of years ago, and I don't drink anymore. But my one vice is I'll have a cigar every now and then. So according to Kaiser Permanente, I'm a smoker. But it was so funny because they're like, you're not on any medication. I'm like, no, I'm not. I take an occasional anti-inflammatory, and I take multivitamins, and that's it. So To me, I look at exercise as preventative healthcare, preventative medicine. Is sweating 30 minutes a day, getting a little bit out of breath is much more preferable to, heaven forbid, getting sick and having to get stuck in the whole healthcare crisis that we deal with right now.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. No, I completely agree. Okay. And by the way, I love the refurbishing of the car analogy. I think that's something everybody can relate to for sure. So yeah, thank you for that. Okay, so you're at a coffee house, a local coffee house, catching up with a female friend from college, and she's active. So she works out, but she's like, "Oh, I don't know, Pete." She's like, "What used to work just doesn't anymore. I'm hurting all the time. My body just doesn't move like it used to. I guess this is just how it's going to be." So first of all, what are you drinking at the coffee
Yeah.
house? And then
Okay.
second of all, what kind of guidance or encouragement do you give her?
I pretty much take my coffee straight coffee, a little bit of light cream. It's one of those things of where years ago I learned that a lot of us, we forget the fact that liquid still contains calories, right? And again, I'm not a super health nut when it comes to nutrition, but I kind of decided a number of years ago I can either take my sugar calories as alcohol, or I can take my sugar calories as the occasional donut. And personally, I get in a lot less trouble, legally speaking. I get in a lot less trouble when I have an extra donut or two than when I drink extra alcohol. So, but um, but when I look at that, so when I look at coffee houses, I'm a huge fan of coffee houses, right? And in the before times, I would do a lot of my writing. Smarter Workouts is written in a lot of different Starbucks. But I drink straight black coffee with a little bit of cream, and it's just because I try not to get the extra calories that way. But when I ask that, when I'm at, and I get asked that question a lot, right? I get asked that question from people, from people I know on Facebook, from both men and women I've known. And the main thing is just looking at what you've been doing. And a lot of people either don't change their workouts up enough, meaning they've been doing the same thing for years. They've been following the same program for years, doing the same classes for years. So they either don't change their workouts up enough, or they change their workouts up too frequently. Meaning, like, I had one neighbor across the street. I'd see her, "Hey, how you doing?" And she'd be like, "Oh, I'm doing boxing. I found this great boxing gym. I love boxing, 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 boxing." But, and you've probably heard this before too. 5, 6 weeks later, "So how's that? How's boxing going?" "Well, my shoulder was hurting me, so now I'm doing Pilates, 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 Pilates." 5, 6 weeks later, "How you doing?" "Well, Pilates got a little bit boring. The instructor changed, so now I'm doing indoor cycling." The point is, they jump from program to program, and they only do one form of exercise, and they do it so often they either get hurt or they get burnt out with it. So those are the two. So it really is trying to find, that's where I try to get people thinking about, number one, what do you enjoy doing? And number two, change it up. I try to get people changing their workouts when the seasons change. We have 4 seasons a year. Each season's about,
Most of us.
what's that? Well,
I know.
well,
4 theoretical
if you're like me
seasons.
and I'm in San Diego, the seasons change. Like, we're about to get the red cups for Starbucks, so that means it's going to be winter.
Yeah,
When you get the juices,
exactly.
that means it's springtime. When you get the frozen drinks, that means it's summertime. And then when you get the pumpkin spice everything, that means it's fall. That's how I know the seasons change here in San Diego, is by what's on the Starbucks menu. But in all seriousness, it's like I try to get people thinking about, when the seasons change, that's when you should shift your workout program. Maybe you go from doing indoor cycling. Maybe if you're at a club, at a studio, then maybe instead of taking indoor cycling classes, take the treadmill running classes, or just change your class, change your programming up. Don't need to change everything, but just change it up a little bit about every 3 months, because after 3 months, what we know about the science of it is, after about 10 to 12 or 16 weeks, the body has adapted to the workload, and it's time to challenge your muscles to do something different or do something new.
And I love the change it with the seasons, because I think that's good. And I think too, one thing that a lot of people get, and I've been writing about this in the book that I've been working on, is, so the title of it is "I Have to Work Off Dessert and Other Rules to Break." And so it's
I like that. I love that.
yeah. Actually, I hope I should probably ask you offline. I'm quoting a little bit of Smarter Workouts in there, to be honest, but
No,
but a lot of it, the science behind all of these things that we've always learned, and one of the things that one of the rules is, well, what worked what worked in the past will work again. And I think we go to this default of like, oh, well, this is what I've always done. And that's not necessarily true. And I know, you and I, our focus is, our wheelhouse is fitness, but that goes into the nutrition too. And how at this age, particularly for women, exercising more and eating less, if they're wanting to lose weight, is not necessarily the most effective way for sustainable weight loss.
And that really is, and that's where I try to get people thinking about it. And if you're with earlier, I don't like using the D word. To me, diet's a 4-letter word. I want people just thinking more about how are you fueling, and thinking about just, it's not so much at this point. Hopefully by the time we're in our 40s, we know what we should be eating and we know what we shouldn't be eating. It just is building our habits around doing more of what we should be doing, and trying to have fewer opportunities to do what we shouldn't be doing. Like right now, it's killing me. I go to my kids' house, I go to my ex-wife's place where my kids live, and there's candy all over the place. And I'm just sweet.
Yeah.
Normally I don't buy candy myself. I don't, with the exception of every now and then. But it's like, if it's around, I'm one of those people, I'm going to eat it. So it's creating the habits that really support optimal health.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah, the candy is a killer. I think my kids are a little bit older than yours. One of the things, as a side note, as a parent, that's been really hard for me is I now know, I know if I'm eating a bunch of Snickers, I know how that's going to make me feel. And I know that's what's doing it to my body. Well, they don't have that. They're 16 and 15-year-old boys. Like they can, I mean, they'll go to Whataburger before, a basketball game or whatever. And so I've really, and I don't have the right answer, but that's been a challenge of mine, is like, educating my kids, but not being overbearing, because there's a whole lot of psychology that goes in with that.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
It can be a total, we'll just call it a challenge as a as a parent. Okay. I know we're nearing the end of our time together, and I do want to honor your time. Can you tell everybody or talk to them a little bit about some of the online programs that you have? Because you've really bundled up a lot of your information and not only put it in the print version, but also in the and from exercise standpoint and from some online courses. So tell us a little bit about what you have there.
Well, no, and I try to do on my blog, PeteMcCallFitness.com. I try to put out information again for our demographic. If you're looking for how to get 6-pack abs or how to sculpt your booty or whatever, that's not me. I'm not, you're not going to come to my website. But what I am trying to do is trying to teach you how to move and teach you how to own your vessel, own the body that we've been given, so you move comfortable in it, and you're more comfortable within it. And so I have workouts. I have a dumbbell workout, I have a kettlebell workout, and I'm just getting ready to release. I was just working on it right before we got on the call. I'm getting ready to release a total body core training CEC course. But with that, I did it's called Functional Core Training. It's an ebook, and it goes through how your muscle. I have dynamic anatomy, I have functional core training, and I have exercise for the Fountain of Youth. Those are ebooks. But what I try to do is I just try to put good evidence-based, research-based information. It's not what I say, it's what the evidence says, and it's what the evidence is showing about how we should apply it. And again, it's nothing about, we all want to look better, right? We all want to look good. I mean, we want to take care of our appearance, but really it's more of just like, how do you stay healthy and fit? And what motivates me, what drives me, Amy, is I think about my buddies from high school who are 50 something years old and doing half pipes, skating half pipes with their kids. And this is something I don't talk about that much, but I in my 20s and 30s, I played a lot of rugby, and I played with guys. You can go out and play. I was going to do a couple over 45 rugby tournaments this year. There are guys, and I've played with guys in the late 40s and early 50s who are still running around playing rugby with guys in their 20s. Those are the people. Yeah,
that's amazing.
Those are the people that's the culture that I kind of got fit in, right? Is I was 22 years old, just getting out of college, and I was this cocky little whatever former college football player. And these guys that were in their late 30s at the time, 15 to 20 years older than me, knocked the snot out of me, on the rugby pitch. And I'm like, at that time, I switched on. I said, I want to be in their shape when I get to their age. And then, you go to tournaments, you see guys in their 50s, and they're out there still playing and running. And hockey has the same thing. Texas, I know, doesn't really have much of a hockey culture. But in hockey, when I lived in Boston, there are guys in their late 40s and early 50s still going out on the ice and playing hockey like they're in their 20s. That's the mindset that I'm trying to cater to.
Yeah.
Are people our age who want to go out and enjoy their favorite activities and don't want to slow down. I mean,
Yeah.
we have to pay attention to our body, so we are going to slow down. But I want you to be able to go out to that recreational hockey game. I want you to be able to do that race. I want you to be able to play with your kids and not worry about being on the couch for 4 days afterwards nursing a bad back.
Yeah,
That's the type of
exactly.
stuff that I try to put out there.
Yeah, exactly. I think a lot of it is, yeah, definitely like keeping up with the kids. And I have these grand visions of one of my kids like ending up, where there's elevation and trees.
Yeah.
So like, rather than the flatlands of Houston, but like going out and hiking all day with them and yeah, that kind of stuff. I mean, that's what drives me is just the being able to the ability to do the things that I want to do and not be constrained by yeah, not being conditioned enough to do it, or that my knees will have to be iced for 3 days later, or any of that kind of stuff,
Well, and
any of that kind of
you've heard
stuff.
me say that on my podcast, and fitness. And for your listeners, I define fitness personally. Fitness is having the ability to do what you want to do when you want to do it. If what you want to
Yeah,
do is take half naked selfies on Instagram, well, then that's your definition of fitness, and that's more power to you. But if you just want to be able to walk around the block and play with your kids and not be in just abject pain the next day, well, fitness can help you achieve that too. I mean, that really is. I try to leave an open definition of it so people can really find their own fitness within that.
and at the beginning of my show, I always say we take care of our bodies so we can do what we're called to do, because having that farther purpose than whatever it is that I'm wanting to do. Is there anything that you see that other fitness professionals, and I know this is a little bit of a tight, you've got to be kind of careful, but that other fitness professionals that just makes you squirm, that you're looking at that and and you're like, oh, I really wish that they were presenting information or doing something different.
That's a huge question. I think the main thing is making things hard for the sake of being hard. That's when we
Mm,
start off the conversation about doing other people's classes. We don't
yeah,
need to make things hard for the sake of being hard. I can make a workout hard. Making a workout hard is not hard. That's a very easy thing to do. But it
yeah,
just is being smart and being methodical and respecting the science. There's no need
yeah,
to go slam your face into the wall. Again, if you're 25 years old, you can get away with that. You can do the high intensity WOD 6 days a week. But once you get over the age, I realized, and I don't know how you felt, but once I hit 35, I couldn't, I didn't recover as quickly. And I was still playing competitive rugby at 35 years old. I couldn't recover as quickly. I felt differently. And so I really need to respect
yeah.
the body. And that's the one main thing that I think in our industry is I really wish fitness professionals would just pay attention to. You don't need to make things hard for the sake of being hard. And if you're in your mid to late 20s, you have to understand that people in their 40s and 50s are fit as heck and can do a lot of stuff, but they just they can't work at that same work rate or that same intensity, and they just need to be mindful of that.
Totally. Totally. Okay. All right. I know people are going to want to get a hold of you, and tell everybody really quickly about Homeroom Fit, and then also how we'll put all of this in the show notes, but how people can get in touch with you or connect with you on the socials and all of that fun stuff.
Well, I would say thank you because I'm so used to being on the opposite side of this. So it's so cool to have an opportunity. That's what I haven't done, right? I haven't gone out and done much self promotion. But yeah, I'm doing Homeroom Fit is a platform started by a colleague who saw a need for home online workouts that were accessible and affordable. So
Yeah.
homeroomfit.com. I teach on there Wednesdays and Fridays. I do a 30-minute hit from home. I try to think of it as a smart approach to hit of where I want you being, like you said, I want your face being flushed. I want you being out of breath, but I don't want your knees and shoulders, talking back at you the next day. Now your muscles might talk back at you. I'm fine with your muscles being a little bit
That's
sore,
okay.
but I
Yeah.
don't want your joints being sore. So that's homeroomfit.com. I'm not the only one on there. There's indoor cycling, there's yoga, there's bar. The woman who started it's a big bar instructor. So there's a lot of bar classes. And that really is just for people looking for good virtual programming at home. I think it's $10 a class and just directly to the comfort and safety of your home. And then my website is PeteMcCallFitness.com. I post blogs on there. If people join my mailing list, I send them a chapter from Smarter Workouts along with one of the workouts to kind of introduce them to the concept. And then the podcast, as you mentioned, is all about fitness. And that's really, and I try to have good, it's funny. I get requests as you start growing your podcast, you'll get this, and maybe you already have. And I really turn down a lot of requests because I want to speak to people about the science. And when I look
Yeah.
back, when I was looking back over this past year, I didn't realize it's not, well, it is on purpose, but so many people have PhDs or RDs or MDs. And I really just try to have a higher level discussion. I don't bro out. I don't, I don't want to be one of the bro. There are so many of those out there. I try to have a higher level discussion. My goal is I want to be the NPR fitness podcast. I want to have a higher level discussion that people have to pay attention to, and they're going to learn something about it. And because of what I want people to be able to do is be able to go back and ask their doctor or ask their professionals they're working with, hey, is this something I should be doing? I heard about it from this. So that's really, so all about fitness. I think I'm on all the podcast platforms. As you know, this is all stuff that, it's
I know
independent
it's
guy. I don't have one of the big platforms behind me. I'm a one-man show. And I try to do that. And then I've also started a YouTube channel where I'm trying to put information up again, relevant. It's the All About Fitness podcast YouTube channel. And now that I'm done with the second book, I'm going to have a lot more time to focus on developing content for that. And also my kids are back in school 2 days a week, which is, that's a whole, so the schedule for that's a whole nother thing. And, so I'm just
Yeah.
really, I think I like what you say. And again, I look at the calling. For some reason, this stuff comes easy to me. Understanding fitness comes easy to me. That's what I love to do. I love sharing it with others. And that's what I try to do is whether I'm creating content for a client like Nautilus or whether I'm doing it for myself, I just try to help people understand how to use exercise to enhance their quality of life. That's really what
Yeah.
I feel that I'm called to do.
Yeah. Oh, well, you're doing a great job at it. Thank you. Thank you for that. I mean, thank you for your leadership in that. And like you said, and I will confirm you do evidence-based information and you do get really high quality people on there. I have learned so much from you, your show and your book. And I just really encourage everyone to go connect with you, buy Smarter Workouts. If there's a pre-order for Ageless Intensity, I want it because that kind of stuff not only educates me, but I'm able to use that for my own clients too. So, from the fitness professional aspect, that's it's been really helpful.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'll find out. I'll reach out to Human Kinetics and see if there's a pre-order form and see if I can get a copy
Yeah.
to you. But yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I thank you because I'm super excited about that because especially for those of us, when you look at the stuff for people, exercise for people the age of 50, there's nothing out there. And if you're fit and you're in your late 40s, early 50s, don't slow down. Respect your body, but maintain your fitness.
One of the things I really appreciate about Pete, and then really as an extension of the guest that he brings on his podcast, is the ability to look into the science and understand how that relates to our movement, but at the same time, recognize the bigger picture. It's not always about perfectly executing every single thing that we do. It's the consistency, like he talks about. It's the trend that we have as we get older. Is it strange to say I'm kind of excited to see how we age and how the impact of our health and our fitness transpires over the course of the next several years and decades? I really hope that you enjoyed that discussion as much as I had it. Hey, don't forget to go get your download, How to Enjoy Shame-Free Health by Breaking 8 Rules, over at gracedhealth.com/bad rules. And if you know someone whom today's conversation would serve, or they like the geeky stuff too, if you could send this to them, that is so helpful for the show. You can text it to them, put it on your Instagram stories with a screenshot, social media over on Facebook. That's always really helpful. And if you haven't subscribed to the Graced Health podcast, I invite you to click that so you can get your own Graced Health every week. What's the one simple thing I want you to remember, which is something I try to do in every episode? That's the importance of rest days. As we talk more and more about our fitness this year, and there will be seasons where we do more than others, but that's something that I have really had to intentionally incorporate into my own health regimen and my own fitness programming. Rest days are huge the older you get. So do not feel shamed when you don't take them. And I love that Pete is so focused on them as well. Okay, that is all for today. Go out there and have a graced day.